तिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जन शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा गदामह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्ता राधाकान्त नमस्ते। सप्तकाञ्चन गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसादि गौर भक्तवृंदा। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे. So, okay, so what was the name of chapter 12 that we did yesterday? What was the name of that chapter?
Devotional service.
Devotional service. Bhakti Yoga.
Bhakti Yoga. Devotional service. Very nice. Thank you. What was the name of chapter 11?
Universal form.
Vishwarupa Sandarshan Yoga. Vishwarupa Sandarshan Yoga.
Very nice. Vishwarupa Sandarshan Yoga, or the universal form. What was the question that Arjuna asked Krishna in chapter 12? What did he ask in the beginning of chapter 12?
What is personal and impersonal? Which is better?
Which worship is better? Personal.
Which worship is better? Or
Very nice.
impersonal?
Okay, and who can tell me, thank you, who can tell me the 8 questions asked by Krishna in chapter 8? Because now this chapter, Krishna asked by Arjun to Krishna in chapter 8. Because in this chapter now, Krishna is going to ask 6 questions. So our list will go on increasing. 8 questions asked by Arjun in chapter 8. Yes. If somebody can throw some light on it. Yes? No, maybe so. Nobody knows the chapter 8 question asked in chapter 8. I'm audible, right? 100%. You can write to me in the chat also. This is a question, and then we also have one more question unanswered, a link between chapter 3 and chapter 5 that is also not answered completely. Vijaya Mataji, I think you did answer yesterday, so I would like to give a chance to someone who didn't answer ever. Okay, if you would like to answer. Kayur Prabhu, would you like to answer? You have been an old student. What are the 8 questions asked by Arjun to Krishna in chapter 8? Oh, Krishna. Yes, Prabhu, you can unmute. Go ahead, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Ma Dandvat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. Go ahead. You're audible, Prabhu. You can go ahead.
Hare Krishna Ma Dandvat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, can you hear us?
Yes.
Would you like to tell us the answer? Megha Mataji.
Actually, my voice is not working properly today. I am not well.
Oh, okay.
My voice is, मेरी आवाज बैठी हुई है.
How to remember Krishna at time of birth. Okay, Megha Goyal Mataji, your answers are right. Okay, Prabhu, please feel better. Okay, so Megha Mataji answered, at least one answer. Now this chapter is called Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga, the nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness. Let's pay our obeisances to Shri Radha Govinda before we go ahead. These are this is a synopsis of chapter 12, Bhakti Yoga. So Arjuna asks, which worship is better, worship of the personal form or worship of the impersonal form of Brahmajyoti? Krishna establishes the superiority of bhakti over impersonalism, and then he gives progressive stages of devotion. If you can't do Ananya Bhakti, then do Sadhana Bhakti. If you can't do Sadhana Bhakti, then do Nishkam Karma Yoga. If you can't do Nishkam Karma Yoga, then do Sakam Karma. If you can't do that, then do Dhyana. But better than Dhyan is Dhyan, and better than Dhyan is renunciation of activities, renunciation of fruits of activities. And then Krishna gives a list of qualities that endear one to Krishna. This chapter, Arjuna asks 6 questions in the beginning of the chapter to Krishna, and Krishna answers. The rest of the chapter is about answering the 6 questions. So this is He asked, what is Kshetra, what is Kshetragna, what is Jnana? Kshetra means field, Kshetragna means knower of the field, and Jnana means knowledge. What is the process of acquiring knowledge? What is the object of knowledge? Jnanam. What is Prakriti or material nature? Purusha, or here Purusha means living entity or soul. And what is the link between the two of them? How are they both united? And then vision of knowledge. So the chapter 1 to 6 of Bhagavad Gita, we discussed this. Krishna brings up the point of karma or action, and action on the platform of knowledge. Right? This is the link between chapter 3 and 5. So karma yoga, Krishna says a general principle of acting on Krishna consciousness. And in chapter 5, he gives the details of how to act in those principles, how to act and how not to act also, and what are the three doers. I only discussed chapter 5 in brief, but if you really read the chapter, the principles of acting in karma yoga are discussed. In chapter 3, the definition of karma yoga and the general principle is given. But how to act and what are the three doers or three actors, this all details are given in chapter 5. Perfection of actions, action performed to please the Lord, please Lord Krishna is Bhakti Yoga. That is the last verse of chapter 6. Then in chapter 7 to 12, Krishna discusses pure Bhakti Yoga. Now chapter 13 to 18, the last third of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna again comes back to give knowledge. And then through knowledge, how one can achieve perfection of Bhakti Yoga. So if Bhakti is a culmination, then why is Jnana presented in the last 6 chapters? Right? Krishna says the highest ladder, yoginam api sarvesham madgatar antaratmanaha. So of the best of the yogis is the one who is always thinking of me within their heart. So that means that Bhakti Yoga is the topmost. But then why Krishna comes back to give us knowledge in the last 6 chapter? There's a lot of Sankhya discussed in the last 6 chapter, and a lot of knowledge, which begins with chapter 13. So in truth, the entire Bhagavad Gita is Bhakti. The first 6 chapters discuss how to achieve Bhakti through work. Okay, and then the last 6 chapters describe how to achieve Bhakti through knowledge. And the middle 6 discuss the Bhakti itself. Sorry. In 12th chapter, Krishna explained how he personally delivers his devotees from birth and death. Mrityu Sansara Sagarat. So the last 6 chapters provide the philosophical knowledge necessary to extricate oneself from the material world. So we discussed that what is devotional service in the middle 6 chapter. The last 6 chapter is going to give, Krishna is going to give a very deep philosophical knowledge, which once understood, one would like to elevate themselves from the material world. Jnana has its use in assisting our detachment from Maya and attachment to Krishna. Right? That is why it's called Jnana Yoga. One detaches from what is not true to something which is eternally true. Hence, when we use knowledge as means to attain devotion, it becomes a part of bhakti. It's not knowledge itself, it's bhakti. These are the 6 questions that Arjuna asked to Krishna. This is relatively simple. He asked, what is Prakriti, what is Purusha, what is Kshetra, what is Kshetragna, what is Jnanam, and what is Jnanam? Krishna answers, Prakriti means material nature. Purusha means enjoyer of Prakriti. Okay, Purusha does not mean male or female. Purusha, literal meaning of the word Purusha is the one who enjoys or enjoyer. Supreme Purusha is Krishna, right? He says that. Bhoktaram Yagna Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. So I am the enjoyer. Actually, Krishna is the only enjoyer of all the austerities and all the sacrifices done by every single living entity in all the planets. So that's Supreme Purusha. But then the soul sometimes also tries to become an enjoyer. So here Purusha refers to the soul, not to the male or female. That's not the literal meaning of the word in Sanskrit. Kshetra, what is Kshetra? Krishna says Kshetra is this body, the field of activity which soul uses to do its activity. It's a field. Kshetra literally means field, but over here it refers to body. Kshetragna means one who knows the field. So there are 2 knowers, soul and super soul in every body. What is Jnanam or knowledge? Understanding the relation between Kshetra and Kshetragna is knowledge. Jnanam, what is the goal of knowledge? To understand Paramatma is goal of knowledge. So this is what he asked. Arjun said, oh my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field and the knower of the field, and of knowledge and end of knowledge. The blessed Lord then said, This body, O son of Kunti, is called the field. And one who knows this body is called the knower of the field. So he goes on. So this body, which is given to the soul, which the soul uses to conduct so many activities, is a field of activities. But the soul and the super soul are the two knowers inside the body. So the soul knows only about its own body, and the super soul or Paramatma knows about all the bodies at the same time. So it's a super knower. It's easy actually. It's very logical to understand like this. He continues, Kshetragnam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata kshetra kshetragnor jnanam yad taj jnanam matam mama. O sign of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. And to understand this body and its owner is called knowledge. That is my opinion. So 3 questions answered. One is what is Kshetra or field? Then Krishna answers that that is the body. What is Kshetragna or the knower of the field? There are 2 knowers. One is a soul and another is a super soul. What is knowledge? The knowledge is to understand the body, and its owner is called knowledge. That is what Krishna is saying. So there are 3 levels of consciousness described in 3rd canto Srimad Bhagavatam that a living entity goes through in 24-hour cycle. Jagrati, then sleep, and then Shishupti. Jagrati means awake. So when we are awake and when we recognize ourselves as being part of this family, my name is this, my activity is this. So awake state, right? That's like 8 hours out of 24 hours, or maybe 12 hours or 13 hours out of 24 hours in a day. So that time also there are 2 knowers, soul and super soul. And when one is in the light sleep, when there is dream happening in the sleep, that sleep cycle is called light sleep or rapid eye movement, right? Those of who knows the sleep cycle. So that particular time when the gross body is sleeping, but the mind is still dreaming, but means the subtle body is still not sleeping. That time also there are 2 knowers, soul and the super soul. And when the body, gross and subtle body, are sleeping, very, very deep sleep, when there are no dreams, that time also there are 2 knowers, soul and super soul. So soul and super soul are the knowers in all the 3 levels of consciousness all the time. But we change our knowing position when we are awake, when we are in light sleep, and when we are in deep sleep. It's so deep, right? So this is just to explain the meaning of the word Kshetra and Kshetragna. Kshetra can be compared to this field. This is a farming field, for example. So this particular field of farm is known by the farmer, right? The farmer who is tilling the field, he knows where is what in the field, what is to be grown where, what is to be harvested where. But this particular farmer is only aware of its own field. But then there is a super knower who knows not only about this field but also all the field across the globe, and that is sun. That is compared to the second knower. Compared, so sun knows about this field and also the other field and also many other fields across the whole world. Like that, soul only knows about its own body, but Paramatma or the super soul knows about all the body. My body, your body, cat's body, dog's body, this plant's body, everybody, the demigod's body. They know, the super soul knows about everybody at the same time. Okay, so just to give a very brief overview again. So Krishna describes Kshetra and Jnanam. So answer to 4th question, what is Kshetragna? There is also a second knower of all fields, the super soul. And answer to 5th question, what is Jnanam? To understand body and its knowers, what are the 2 knowers? The soul and super soul is called as knowledge. Okay, knowledge, to study the object matter of the field of activity and the knower of the field very minutely. That is Jnana. So Kshetra means field, and there are 2 kinds of knowers, super soul and individual soul. That is Kshetragna. Okay, now this knowledge is actually just telling us how a soul is imprisoned within the body. That knowledge of the field of activities and that of the of the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings. It is specially presented in Vedanta Sutra with all reasoning as to cause and effect. So this knowledge which Krishna is saying is he's giving reference. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport of 5th verse. that this is a way of describing something authentic. How do you know whether somebody who's speaking is authentic or not? So they give reference. They give reference of somebody who's authentic. Over here, Krishna doesn't really need to give a reference because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. But to teach us, he's giving reference that this knowledge that I'm describing to you, what is Kshetra, what is Kshetra, what is Kshetragna, is actually described by various sages in various Vedic writings. And Srila Prabhupada writes there that various sages means one of the most important sages, Krishna himself, but then there is Vyasdev, Narad Muni. There are other sages that write about the same thing as Krishna is speaking, which just means that whatever Krishna is speaking is valid, is validated, is authentic. And that is how Prabhupada has taught us to read the Shastras, to preach the Shastras, and to understand the Shastras. That there's got to be a reference. I coined this word, okay? Evidence-based spirituality. We do evidence-based medicine, but then there's this evidence-based spirituality. What is the evidence on which you're basing your understanding of the science of Krishna consciousness? If the evidence is mind, then it is not an evidence, it is an opinion. So we are not the society of opinions. Okay, in ISKCON, at least I can talk for ISKCON, everywhere in the whole world. And especially presented in Vedanta Sutra with all reasoning as to cause and effect. This is a little bit difficult to understand, but just to give you a principle. So Vedanta Sutra means that the end of Veda, Anta. Anta means something which ends, and Veda means knowledge. So end of knowledge. And Sutra means code. In literal meaning of the word Sutra is coding. You see, in today's world, the word coding is very frequently used. There's such a big program is now coded into some particular language. Like that, very vast knowledge is coded into the sutras in Vedanta, in Vedic scriptures. For example, Athata Brahma Jigyasa. Athata Brahma Jigyasa is a aphorism of Vedanta Sutra, which means now become inquisitive. So Athata means therefore, or now become inquisitive, or therefore now. But what does it mean? It means that having acquired a human form of life, become inquisitive who you are. Are you the body? Are you the mind? Are you the intelligence? Are you the soul? Who you are? So this is a sutra, this is a coding, but behind this there is so much of science that the soul goes through, how the soul becomes conditioned in the material world, how it goes through 8 million forms of life before it comes to human form of life, and how in the human form of life it goes through uncivilized form and then civilized form. Okay, so just a coding, and behind the coding there is a lot of knowledge. So all the Vedanta sutras culminate with its all reasoning as to cause and effect. So cause is present in the effect always. That's easy to understand. Very easy to understand. Cause is always present in the effect. For example, if a mother and a father have a child, that's the effect, right? The child is the effect of the mother and father's presence. But mother and father are also present in the child. Are you understanding? I'm trying to simplify it as much as I can. Are you understanding that in the body of a child, the mother and father are present? The child is the effect and mother and father are the cause. So that way, cause is always present in the effect. Are you understanding a little bit? No? Yes?
No.
Yes,
Yes,
no?
Mataji. Yes, Mataji.
Yes, yes.
A little bit. We're not going to go in much detail, even though Krishna does describe it in previous chapters in Bhagavad Gita, the cause and effect principle. Anyhow, so these are the 5 kinds of consciousness which Prabhupada writes about in verse 5 purport. How human consciousness is the most evolved consciousness. If somebody is on an Annamaya principle means there's a consciousness, but the consciousness is only limited to that I need to eat. Krishna or God is present only in the grain. Or if I don't eat, I will die. That kind of a principle is Annamaya. That my living is dependent on food. For example, a small child doesn't know anything other than eating, or if they need to be picked up or this, but mostly eating, right? Or animals are like that. They are always looking for eating. They get up in the morning so that they can find a grain. A bird is looking for a grain of food to eat, Or similarly, all the animals are just eating, and then they rest, or they may have children, they may make some living, like nest or some habitat, but their main principle is to make all those is to eat. So that's Annamaya principle. Then beyond that is Pranamaya principle. When one understands that I'm actually living also, there is a life force inside me. A child, tell me, if a newborn baby, somebody comes to harm the newborn baby, does the newborn child has a consciousness to resist that? Will the child resist that? Yes.
No,
The child
Mataji.
resists that.
No.
That
No,
you have
Mataji.
come to. So thank you. So that's because it's a low level of consciousness. Animals are the same. If there is a goat and the herd of goats, okay, let's say now the goat is seeing that my friend is just taken away into slaughterhouse and is not coming back, but that particular goat is not bothered because it's just gonna go on eating its green grass. On the other hand, if a human being is in a situation like this where one person around them is taken away and killed, a human being would like to, like, save themselves and run around because the consciousness is developed. Okay, pranmaya is a little bit higher than I'm living. Animals also have pranmaya consciousness. If you pick up a stone and try to throw it on a dog, the dog will run for its life because it knows that I'm living and get hurt. So finding Krishna in the life, pranmaya, and jnanamaya. So somebody who becomes a little bit more elevated and curious, then they come to the mind level. That actually, my goal of my life is not just to breathe or not just to eat food, but there is got to be something else. So the mind level, that person is very philosophical, is very attached to classical music. So at the mind level, the subtle body. Then Vijnanamaya. Vijnanamaya is intelligence, using the intelligence to understand that am I really mine? Or have I been always not dragged by my mind? The mind says, go there, go do this, do that. Is the goal of my life only to eat? Is the goal of my life only to breathe better? What is the goal of my life? Those are important, but what is the goal? So in that principle, one becomes full of knowledge, and also and gets a knowledge of eternity. So one is out of Sat, Chit, and Ananda principle. Sat and Chit principle is understood in Vijnanamaya, where one becomes Brahma realized and understands that I am actually eternal, and I am a soul. I'm not a body. I'm not mind. So only two principles, but there is no bliss. There is no happiness. So that also is not very a very stable consciousness or very happy consciousness. So the best is Anandmaya Kosha. Anandmaya Kosha is Satchit and Ananda principles are completely realized when one fully understands that I'm actually Sat, I'm actually eternal, I'm actually full of knowledge, and I'm also actually full of bliss. I'm actually supposed to be full of bliss. I'm not supposed to be full of miseries and die and grow old and suffer diseases or take birth in such horrible conditions. So that particular principle, one becomes fully realized of their own position as part and parcel of Krishna, and one becomes fixed in devotional service. So these are the five levels of consciousness one can go through. Bhakti Yoga brings one directly to the principle of Anandmaya. The Gyan Yoga one brings one to a principle of Vijnanamaya, but that's not the aim, right? That's not the final word. Jnanamaya, okay, maybe somebody who's trying to cultivate some speculative or philosophical knowledge. Pranmaya and Anmaya are very low level. So far, what did we discuss? So far, we discussed Arjuna's 6 questions to Krishna. What were the 6 questions? What is Prakriti? What is Purusha? What is Jnanam? What is Gyanam? What is Kshetra? What is Kshetragna? Krishna answered, Kshetra is the field of activities, which is body. Kshetragna is the knower of the field of activity, which are 2 in number, soul and super soul. Jnanam is to know the relationship between Kshetra and Kshetragna. And then he described the knowledge of Kshetra and Kshetragna is also given by various sages in various Vedic writings. And then we discuss the 5 levels of consciousness. So after he describes all this, these are 24 elements. Karthik Prabhu, if you can pull up the slide you sent me, I'll ask you to share because I couldn't get a time to put it in my slideshow, but we can show that slide after this particular verse.
Sure, Mataji.
Thank you. The 5 great elements: false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses, the mind, the 5 sense objects: desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms and convictions. All these are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interaction. The body. These are the ingredients of the body, both gross and subtle. These are 24 elements described here. 5 great elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. Everyone's body is made of earth, water, fire, air, ether in different proportion. This is the principle on which Ayurvedic science is based, right? Which element is high, is what proportion is present in what body. What is that? There are words also, right? That if pitta or whatever. I'm not an Ayurvedic person, so if the pitta is high, or if the vayu is high, or if the fire element is high, what element is high? So it is based on this. So these are 5 great elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. 5 ho gaya. Then false ego is the 6. Intelligence is 7. Unmanifested is 8. The unmanifested means the 3 modes of material nature which are not yet manifested: mode of goodness, passion, ignorance. The 10 senses. There are 5 knowledge acquiring senses and 5 working senses. So that makes it 18. 5 knowledge acquiring senses are these shown in the picture over here. The eyes, we acquire knowledge by eyes. We acquire knowledge by nose. We acquire knowledge by hearing. We acquire knowledge by touch. We acquire knowledge by taste. So these are 5 knowledge acquiring senses. And 5 working senses. For example, the hands, the legs, the vocal cords. So that makes it 3. And then the organs of evacuation and organ of reproduction. Those are the 5 working senses. So it makes 18. Then the mind makes it 19, and 5 sense objects. So 19 plus 5, 24. So eyes have an object of vision, right? That's a sense object. Nose as an object of smell. Ear have an object of hearing. Hand as an object of touch. Tongue as an object of taste. So that makes it 24. These are the 24 things which are described in Sankhya philosophy. They brag themselves so much, or so-called scientific knowledge in today's world, brag themselves so much about knowing so much, but Krishna says they know nothing more than these 24 elements. Nothing. They don't know that the other dimension that exists beyond these 24 elements. And if one wants to understand in detail the 24 elements that Krishna is just mentioning here, then read 3rd canto Srimad Bhagavatam. I think it begins from chapter 26 to chapter 29, where Kapila Dev Muni is giving the knowledge to his mother Devavati in Sankhya philosophy. Okay, and then desire, hatred, happiness, distress, and aggregates, the life symptoms and conviction. These are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interaction. The field of activity is this 24 elements, and the interactions are these. We like something, we hate something. We become happy in some circumstances, we become distressed. These are all nothing but the interaction of these 24 material elements. Prabhupada talks about this a lot in 26th chapter of 3rd canto. He says one should not become so moved by the ethereal things in the world. These are all like misunderstanding. Hatred, desire, happiness are just the components of the ethereal, earth, water, fire, air, ether. So in ether, all these things are happening, and one should not get too much attached or detached to these things, because ultimately soul is completely different. It's completely different dimension. Okay, Prabhu, you can show. I can stop sharing. So Karthik Prabhu will show you. Are you ready, Karthik Prabhu?
Yes, Mataji, I'm ready now. I'm sharing my
Okay,
screen
chalo,
now.
you can share your screen. So he's just gonna share the screen to show this in a very schematic manner or picturistic manner.
Are you able to see my screen, Mataji?
Yes. So 24 elements, the 5 gross: earth, water, fire, air, ether. Then 5 knowledge acquiring senses, 5 working senses, the vocal cords, the legs, the hands, organs of evacuation and organs of reproduction. Then mind, okay, and then intelligence and false ego, and then pradhan. Pradhan is unmanifested 3 modes of material nature, and then the 5 sense objects. And the result of interaction of all these 24 elements are these: pleasure, pain, desire, and hatred. but soul and super soul are completely different from this. Thank you, Prabhu. I'll share my screen. So nice, right? He found it in Back to Godhead magazine, old edition, I think. Okay, now Krishna so far has given us the knowledge of Kshetra, the body. This is the knowledge of the Kshetra. Now, these are the qualities that he mentions. I think these are 20 qualities which one has to cultivate to extricate oneself out of the Kshetra. Because the goal is to understand the body and then get out of the body. By practice, by abhyasena and yogena, not by committing suicide. By practice of detachment, abhyasa, and yogena, by the practice of it is also called as detachment. By practicing the spiritual science and by getting detached from the material element, one can extricate themselves. These are the qualities that one has to develop to get out of the prison. Aman Vittam, these are very difficult. Adham Vittam, Ahimsak Shantir Arjavam, Acharyopasanam Socham Sthairyam Atma Vinigraha. Indra Arteshu Vairagyam Ahankara Evacha Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukha Dosha Nidarshanam Asaktir Anabhishwangaha Putra Dara Grihadishu Nityam Cha Samachitatvam Ishta Nishtu Papa Tishu Mai Cha Ananya Yogena Bhaktir Avyabhicharini Vivikta Desha Sevitvam Arate Jana Samshadi Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam Etaj Jnanam Iti Proktam Anya Ajnanam Yad Ato Anyatha. Everything else that is besides this is ignorance, whatever it may be. Anything that is beyond the component of these qualities, Krishna says, besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. So a spiritual person interested in spiritual science is not attracted naturally. It's not that somebody is working very hard to not get attracted to something material. No, it's natural. It's natural not to get attracted to anything other than Krishna, because Krishna gives so much of knowledge in the heart of that practicing person. Okay, it's a gift from Krishna. When Krishna gives you something, it stays. So these are the qualities. First quality he says is Aman Vittam, humility. Not to be anxious to have satisfaction of being honored. A conditioned soul transforms from one body to another body to another body because it wants to be honored. It wants to be recognized what it's doing because there is something good about it. They feel like there's something that they have discovered new. Or there is an element of false ego that I am the body and my body is doing so many nice things and you honor me. If somebody is not getting honored, then that person can create havoc actually, right? Pridelessness, Adam Vittam, understanding that you're not the body and your honor and dishonor are the same. Pridelessness does not mean that we put ourselves under the earth. It doesn't mean that. It means that the pride which is associated with the body and mind is not so important. There is a pride. A devotee is very proud. What is the pride there? What kind of a pride are they cultivating? That I am part and parcel of Krishna. I am here to serve Krishna. If you see Prabhupada and Prabhupada's way of talking, Prabhupada's way of communicating, he is very proud of who he is. He's very proud of being a devotee of Krishna, and that's the real pride. This pridelessness means that leaving the thing honor and dishonor, but it's very difficult. Okay, this is a gift from Krishna. These qualities are gift from Krishna. We cannot cultivate these qualities just by wanting to cultivate. No, there's got to be a mercy factor. Ahimsa. So ahimsa means that one should not kill other living entities. That's ahimsa, because Krishna doesn't like it. And there's another kind of ahimsa that if unless and until one is elevating people to spiritual knowledge, one is practicing violence. So in Isopnishad, that person is called Atmaha. Atmaha means killer of the soul. Person who is not trying to understand the science of the soul is actually committing violence on their own life. That's what it means here. So tolerance or shantir. So unless and until one is humble and one is prideless, one cannot be tolerant. Or simplicity, arjava, which means that one is so straightforward that one can disclose the truth even to an enemy. But one has to have a full conviction. Example of simplicity is Prahlad Maharaj. Right? Prahlad Maharaj's father, Hiranyakashipu, in 7th canto we read that Hiranyakashipu asked him, my dear son, what is the best thing that you have learned in the school? Best thing. So he thought, Hiranyakashipu thought that Prahlad Maharaj will say the science, the mathematics, or social studies, or whatever. The children tell us that this is the best thing we learned. This is my favorite subject. He thought his son will say something like this, but he answered him straight. He never called Hiranyakashipu father. He said, "Oh, best of the demons. The best thing that I've learned is that become Krishna conscious. Matir na Krishna parato satova. Vittabipadeta grihavritadam adhanta gobe vishatam tamishram punah punascharvita charvananam. Just by Matir na Krishna, the Mati, the intelligence to understand Krishna will not come. Na Krishna. Who? Grihavritanam. So by personal endeavor, by endeavor with another community member, or by endeavor of the whole country or friends, it is not going to come. The Mati, the intelligence to understand Krishna will not come. If one is endeavoring alone, or if one is endeavoring with the community, if one is endeavoring with the friends, who will it not come to? Grihavratanam, one who has accepted the dark well of family as all in all. Adanta gobhir, vichasham tamishram, punah punascharvita charvananam. This is what he answered to Hiranyakashipu, that because that person is just chewing the chew. They know that this is not which is leading them happy, but then there is this false hope that it was not happy. It didn't bring happiness for me, but it will become happiness for my children. It will become happiness for my grandchildren. So they go on and on and on and on, chewing the chewed. Okay, so that's straightforward answer. An example is Prahlad Maharaj. Like that, you can study all these qualities. So Acham is another favorite of Krishna, which he'll mention in many chapters. Or cleanliness. External cleanliness is by keeping the body and where the body stays, that place clean. And internal cleanliness is by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Okay, and Acharya Upasanam is essential. Accepting a spiritual master is essential. Unless and until one has a spiritual master, the person will not be able to understand the science of Krishna. Krishna himself accepted a spiritual master, right? Sandipani Muni. All these you can read. What are the qualities needed? So I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. So now he's talking about the Prakriti and the Purusha. So Purusha, or over here, Brahman means soul. So he's saying that I am going to now going to describe to you the two knowers of the field. You know, Kshetrajna has how many knowers? How many knowers are there for a field of activity? Is everyone awake? This is a heavy chapter. How many knowers?
2 knowers.
Two.
What are they?
Soul and
Soul and
super
super
soul.
soul.
Soul and super
Everyone
soul.
awake. Thank you. So soul and super soul. So here he's describing the soul. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. So and then this is the second knower, the super soul. Sarvendriya gunabhasham, sarvendriya vivarjitam, asaktam sarva bhrikshaiva nirgunam gunabhaktarcha. The super soul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached, although he is a maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time, he is a master of all the modes of material nature. So he is the source of senses, yet without his senses. As Sarva Indriya Guna Bhasham, Sarva Indriya Vivarjitam. So Sarva Indriya Guna Bhasham means that he is the source of all the senses, and Sarva Indriya Vivarjitam means that he doesn't have, or he is unattached, or he is Vivarjitam. Vivarjit means devoid of, doesn't have, not possessing. So it does not have any senses, but he is the source of all senses. What does it mean? It means that all the material senses that we have, the eyes, the nose, the ears, the tongue, or the touch, all those senses that we have, Krishna is the source, but he doesn't have those material senses. His senses are spiritual. Okay, he's without senses means he's without material senses. Guna. Guna word is used, right? So guna means material modes of nature, and guna also means raw. There are two meanings. His senses are spiritual, which is confirmed by Brahma and Brahma Samhita. Angani yasya sakalendriya vrittimanti pashyanti panti kalayanti chiram jaganti ananda chinmya rasatujjvala vigrahasya govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So Angani yasya sakalendriya vrittimanti means that his one part, or Anga means part or limb, can actually perform the function of any other part. So for example, Krishna can talk through his eyes, Krishna can eat through his eyes, Krishna can touch through his eyes. We can't do all those because his senses are spiritual. So spirit is not limited by any time, space, or circumstances. So he can do anything. So that way he's the source of all senses, but he doesn't have any material sense. He's unattached, although he's maintainer of all living beings. Right? We understood that in 9th chapter also, that how he lives in Goloka Vrindavan, but by his energies, everything is maintained. He transcends the modes of nature. Nirguna, Guna Bhoktar Cha. At the same time, he is the master of all the modes of material nature. We know this, that if he controls the modes, but he is not. And he continues, the supreme truth exists both internally and externally, in the moving and unmoving. He is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is also near to all. This is super soul. These are the apparent contradictions, which are also discussed in Isopanishad Mantra 4 and Mantra 5. Where Krishna's apparent contradictions are discussed, that how can something exist both internally and externally. For example, if you are sitting in the inside of a building right now, can you say that you're also sitting outside of the building wherever you are in the whole world right now? Can you say that I am sitting inside my house, but I'm also sitting outside my house?
No.
No, Mataji.
But Krishna can say that he's both internal and external at the same time. Krishna is present in the heart of Parikshit Maharaj, the super soul, but he's also came in the womb outside of the heart, and to save him from the Brahmastra released by Ashwatthama. So he's both inside and outside. He's moving and non-moving, right? He's non-moving because he's fixed in Goloka Vrindavan, but he's also moving, appears to be moving in the material world, within the heart of a living entity. And beyond the power of material senses to see or know, we cannot use our senses to see Krishna. For example, Prabhupada gives example of a cataract. A person has cataract. Now, there could be some object to see, but if a person has a cataract in the lens is opacified, then can they see? Even if the object is there, but can they see? Can they see the person? Not, right? They have to remove the cataract. Are you following? So like that, we cannot see Krishna just by the use of these eyes, because we have a cataract of material conditioning. Although far, far away is also near to all. This is easy to understand. This is super soul explanation. He is the source of all of light in all luminous objects. He's beyond the darkness of matter and is unmanifested. His knowledge, he's the object of knowledge, he's the goal of knowledge, and is situated in everyone's heart. So he is the light. The light, he's a source of light in all luminous objects. Krishna says that, Prabhu Ashmi Shashi Suryaha, I'm the source of light in sun and moon. He's beyond darkness of matter and is unmanifested. Krishna Surya Sama, Maya hai andhakar, jahan Krishna tahan nahi Maya adhikar. Wherever there's a sunlight, there cannot be any darkness. So this matter is dark. The nature of the material world is to be dark. The sun illuminates it. The moon gives the light. But if there are no sun and moon, then the real nature of this world is to be dark. But Krishna is not like that. It's beyond the darkness. They're going in the space. What are they finding? So much darkness. Why don't you just read here and don't waste your time? It is dark and is unmanifested. But Krishna is not like that. He is knowledge. He's the object of knowledge and goal of knowledge in toto, which we will study more in 18th chapter. And he is also situated in everyone's heart. Thus, the field of activity, the body, the knowledge, and the knowable have been summarily described by me. Only my devotee can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to my nature. So Krishna made us understand, right, the body, in which we understood the 24 elements of body, then the 5 interactions of the 24 elements, and we also understood the different kinds of consciousness that the gross and subtle body goes through until the Vijnanamaya Kosha. And then the knowable, because Anandamaya Kosha is the soul level. That's not Kshetra. That's the Kshetragna component. And the knowable, so two knowable, soul and super soul. Soul is subordinate to Krishna, and super soul is the super knower, have been summarily described. And what is knowledge? To know this, activity, the body and the knower of the body. And Krishna says only my devotee can understand, because other people will keep on having maybe this, maybe that. What is this? Maybe this, maybe that. The Shastras don't talk about maybe this, maybe that. They give facts. The imperfect material knowledge languages, maybe, perhaps, or could be. Prabhupada says this is so imperfect that these are the words that have been invented to support the imperfection. And other imperfect person thinks that this is the perfection of imperfection. But we don't read maybe, knowledge, maybe, perhaps, or this kind of language in anywhere in Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam or Chaitanya Charitamrita or any authentic Vedic literature. You will not read these words. Okay, so what did we study? The object of knowledge, Gyanam. What is the object of knowledge? Soul and super soul, which is described in verse 13 to 19. Now, Prakriti and Purusha, material nature and the living entity should be understood to be beginningless. Their transformations and modes of matter are products of material nature. This is a very interesting verse. This chapter is heavy, right? And 1 hour is not a fair time. So material nature or Prakriti and Purusha or enjoyer of the material nature, which in this case is referring to the living entity or different kinds of living entities which are exploiting the material nature. Actually, they are supposed to be eternal. So at this point, I would like to ask you a question, that what are the 5 things which are discussed in Bhagavad Gita? I presented that in the beginning. For chapter, before we discussed chapter 1, we said there are 5 things which are discussed in Bhagavad Gita. If you read or if you paid attention, what are those 5 things which are discussed in Bhagavad Gita? Gaurav Govardhan Das Prabhu, I think you should start taking classes, not answering questions. Who else can answer this question? If no, then I'll give him the chance. What are the 5 things which are discussed in Bhagavad Gita? Sarveshwari Mataji. Yes, Mataji, go ahead.
Ishwar, Prakriti, time,
Kala.
time, work, fourth thing
Karma.
is karma.
And then?
Ishwar, Prakriti, Kala, karma, and Jiva.
Correct. Jiva. Very nice. Yes, Kayur Prabhu, would you like to say? We should finish on time. It's a big chapter. Yes, Prabhu, you can say.
Same thing I was about to say. Ishwar, Jiva, Prakriti, Kala, and Karma are the
Very
5
nice.
things taught in Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
I'm
very
sorry,
nice.
Ma, I
Thank you.
could not answer today's 8th chapter questions, but tomorrow I will surely give you the exact answer. I'm so sorry for today.
No worries. No worries. I'm not. Okay, Hare Krishna. I'm not judging
Hare
anyone.
Krishna.
Okay, so so when we discuss the 5 elements, so this is Prakriti and Purusha or Jiva, and actually this belongs to one of the 5 things that is discussed in Bhagavad Gita. So you should keep thinking that what you're reading and where is the connection. Okay, so material nature are actually supposed to be beginningless, means that we cannot trace out the history of creation of a nature or the soul. But their transformations and modes of matter are products of material nature. If this is beginningless, then how come the soul is changing so many bodies? Jalaja, Navalikhani, Sthavana, Lakshati, something like that is mentioned, that the soul, when it falls, it becomes the grass, and then or it becomes the aquatics, and then aquatics goes through 9 lakh species, and then comes to birds, and birds have these many, everything is mentioned, these many species, and then it comes worm, then bird, and then the achara, the living entities which have no legs, then chara, the one which have legs, from 4 legs to 2 legs, and then to human form of life. So how come everything we are seeing around us doesn't seem to be eternal, right? If anything around you, for example, the place we are sitting, your own body, or anything that you have in your possession, can you say that this is eternal? It's going to last ever and it was always there? Or is there a date of creation and date of expiration?
No, Mataji. No,
So-
Mataji.
So there is a date of creation and date of expiration, right? So what is that? What is happening over there? That's what Krishna is saying, that the transformations, their transformation and modes of matter are products of material nature. So this is only a product of material nature that this happens. Under the influence of modes of material nature, which we will discuss in detail tomorrow in chapter 14, how the soul is changing body. The dress, the body is given according to what mode one is associating with. This is further explained here too. Karya karana kartitva hetu prakatiruchyate purusha sukha dukkha nam bhoktir heturuchyate. Nature is said to be the cause of all material activities and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. So there's a very common question which is asked, is why bad things happen to good people? This is the answer to that question actually. So nature is the cause of all material activities and effects. So nature gives us a field to enjoy and to produce the effect of that enjoyment. Whereas living entity is the cause of various sufferings and enjoyments in the world. But the accountability or responsibility to enjoy or suffer is still resting with the living entity, not the nature. For example, in this painting, I'm showing you this particular person is eating and drinking whatever, no discrimination, right? Whatever eating and drinking is going on, whatever they like. So Krishna has given all these avenues to a living entity to enjoy because that's what they wanted to do. Krishna, being merciful, has given. So Krishna has also said that actually patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati. So if you're my devotee, then give me food from these 4 classes, patram, pushpam, phalam, and toyam, with love and devotion. But if somebody is not a devotee, then they're eating anything and everything. And then what is happening? The super soul is observing that this particular living entity still has a tendency to exploit or enjoy the material nature in this manner, to make a choice of eating and drinking anything and everything. Okay, then give this living entity a facility to enjoy what they really want to enjoy. So because of that, Krishna gives order to the material nature to give facility, and material nature brings forth the body of a hog. Now from this body, next body become a hog and eat or drink anything and everything because that's what you wanted to do. So suffering and enjoyment in this world is resting on our choices. There's no Krishna is just acting as a Upadrishta and Anumanta, which he's going to say now. Understood that if I'm suffering or if I'm enjoying, basically both are the same thing. But in any way, in this material world, we say somebody is suffering and somebody is enjoying, and the person who's not in knowledge of Krishna start blaming Krishna that you did this, you're partial, you're this, but they don't know what was the previous choices that they made. Okay, we cannot hide anything from God. Purusha prakriti sohi bhumte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangasya shadasha yoni janmashu. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the 3 modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil amongst various species. Simple, right? That whatever inclination I am associating with is what I'm going to get. If in the human form of life, if I am not associating with a proper mode, let's say I'm associating with the mode of ignorance. Let's say I want to sleep a lot. Ignorance means indolence, sleep, laziness, procrastination. I'm doing all those things. Okay, then Krishna will give me a body of an animal where I can sleep 6 months out of 1 year, because that's what I am training myself to do. Okay, see, if unless and until we feel there's an accountability, then we cannot feel ourselves responsible. Or if somebody is associating with mode of goodness, is in knowledge. Goodness means in knowledge. Clean is situated in the fact of Brahman, that I'm not the body, I'm the soul. Then okay, the higher planetary system body is waiting. That person is not going to go to hell. That person is not going to become an animal again. Okay, so whatever ways of life we are following while enjoying the 3 modes of nature, that particular thing will bring forth us good and bad. Understood? In various species, not like once you become a human, you cannot go back to animal life. You very well go back to any life. What is Krishna's role in all this? Upadrishta Anumanta cha bharta bhokta maheshwaraha paramatmiti chapi yukto dehi asmin purusha paraha. Yet in this body, there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor. and who exists as overseer and permitter, and who is known as a super soul. So nice, right? Is Upadrishta and Anumanta. Upadrishta means overseer, and Anumanta means give permission. One can say, why Krishna is giving permission to all these things that I'm doing? Why Krishna can stop me? Or because we are not asking Krishna. Krishna has given us a free will, a little bit of an independence to make choices. Okay, that's our independence, to make choices. And Krishna, once he's given it, and if we are not asking Krishna, Krishna help me to make better choices so I can become Krishna conscious, then he's not going to interfere, because that's the meaning of giving. For example, if I give my son 10 rupees, okay, and now I'm like sitting on top of his head and saying, okay, what are you going to do with this 10 rupees? Are you going to save it in your piggy bank? Or are you going to go and buy a notebook with it? Are you going to go and eat ice cream with it? What are you going to do with it? Are you going to buy a pencil with it? What are you going to do with 10 rupees? What are you going to do with 10 rupees? All the time I'm nagging, but I said, but my dear son, this is for you. Whatever you want to do with it, you do. But on the background, I keep asking, what are you going to do? Is that a real independence? Am I being a true to my word kind of a person with my own child, that this is for you? Or am I interfering?
It's interfering.
I'm interfering. So Krishna doesn't do that. Once he has given us an independence to make choice, he doesn't interfere. But he acts as overseer and permitter, because without Krishna's permission, not even a blade of grass will move. He has to give permission for us to enjoy. One who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, which is Prakriti, living entity or Purusha, and the interaction of modes of nature, is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth here again, regardless of his present position. This is called Shruti Phala, just by understanding. He's not even saying practicing. Just by understanding what is my relationship with the material modes of nature, or Prakriti, material nature, and what is Krishna's role in all these things, is sure to attain liberation and will not get birth here again, regardless of his present position, regardless. Okay, so that super soul is perceived by some through meditation, and some through cultivation of knowledge, and others through working without fruitive desire. So everyone is engaged in understanding the Paramatma in their own way. Some are doing meditation, some are cultivating knowledge, and some are working without fruitive desires. And again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. I'm sorry, it's over time, but I'll finish in 2 minutes. So Krishna is so merciful that if somebody comes, for example, let's say that you want to go to the temple or Bhagavad Gita class, but you don't want to go alone, you want to go with your friend. So you go and tell your friend, come with me. And the friend says, what boring thing you're going, let's go and watch a movie, let's go to the mall, let's do some shopping, let's do that. Right? And they say, no, you're my friend, you have to come with me. I'm telling you, I don't want to go alone, but I want to go. So wherever you're saying we can go later, but right now come with me. Friends can talk like this, right? So the friend comes with you. Your friend comes with you, and then they sit in the class. They hear about Krishna. They hear the Bhagavatam class. They hear the discourses on Bhagavad Gita. And just by hearing, even though they never were planning to come, but then just by hearing, they become attached to the hearing. Oh, this is really nice. This makes a lot of sense. So just because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death, even though they didn't come like that. Krishna will still give them that liberation. Okay, now so Prakriti, we studied now the union between Prakriti Purusha in these verses that we did. Now this is very interesting. O chief of Bharatas, whatever you see in existence, both moving and unmoving, is only the combination of the field of activities and the knower of the fields. That's it. So there's all the field of activity and the knower of the field. And in knower of the field, we just know, we may know soul, super soul, so nobody knows. We may know soul, but so menial knowledge. Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishthatam parameshwaram vinashyat svi avinashyatyam yapashyati zapashyati. One who sees the super soul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies, and who understands that neither the soul nor the super soul is ever destroyed, actually sees. Okay, that's a Brahmabhuta Prasannatma, that he actually sees that, okay, somebody has died, but what has died? Just the body, has died, but the soul and super soul is never dies. It's gone to another place. And then that particular person offers prayer in a proper perspective that Krishna, please give protection to the soul. Not like common ignorant people saying, what is it? Rest in peace. What is rest in peace? What is the reference? The reference is this, that pray to Krishna that that particular soul is protected under all circumstances by the super soul. That's a prayer. One who sees super soul in every living being and equal everywhere does not degrade himself by his mind as he approaches a transcendental destination. This is the application of knowledge. This is Vigyan. If somebody is really situated in spiritual science, then they actually upgrade themselves by their mind. They actually use their mind to do the welfare of not only themselves but also of the others. Srila Prabhupada did that, right? Srila Prabhupada is a Brahmabhuta Prasannatma. He's actually beyond that definition. And because he was situated in Krishna consciousness, look at what he has done for each one of us. If Prabhupada did not translate this, we wouldn't be reading it. We wouldn't be discussing it. So that's what a real devotee does. So if you say that you're a devotee of Krishna, you got to do something about it, not just say God is in my heart. You have to show it in your action. One who can see that all the activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees that self does nothing, actually sees. Okay, so this is another way of saying that the soul is situated as though unaffected and untouched by the activities of the body and mind. And I am different from the body and the interactions of my mind. Actually, that way, this is the platform on which the people who are in Krishna consciousness, who are elevated in Krishna consciousness, are dhira. Dhira means sober, right? How can somebody stay so sober? Because they can see that actually I'm not doing anything. So if I'm not doing anything, then how can I be affected by something? So do you get affected by somebody's action who you don't know? Like somebody is doing something on the road. Let's say somebody is cleaning. They were doing their work. They're cleaning the road. But do you get affected by, oh, they're cleaning the road? Or do you just say, okay, observe and then move on? What do you do? What do you do? I am asking you a question. Please tell me.
Observe one.
Or you observe and then move on, right? You don't just get affected. Oh, that person was holding the broom like this. That person was bending like this. That person cleaned this portion, didn't clean that. Do you do all that? No. Similarly, the soul is not affected by the activities of the body. The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all pervading. Similarly, the soul situated in Brahman vision does not mix with the body, those situated in that body. It's very nice. So let's say that you're sitting in a park and then you smell very nice rose aroma. That means that the air that is passing through your nose is actually first passed through the rose garden. So it's carrying the rose aroma. And then you're sitting at the same place, and after some time, the smell of a garbage or trash can comes. That means the air that is now passing through the nose has actually been in contact with a place of garbage where the garbage was discarded. So, but then the air, you cannot say that the air is responsible. The air is not responsible. So after some time, again, these things will become separated. But that way, the soul is sitting in this body, my soul, your soul, everyone's soul, but it's not mixing with the body. It doesn't mix with the blood. It doesn't mix with the muscle. It doesn't mix with the bone. It doesn't mix with the nerves. It doesn't mix with all those things. It still stays separate, even though it is sitting there. Oh, Krishna, we're almost done. Oh, son of Bharata, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminate the entire body by consciousness. Okay, so consciousness is the symptom of the soul. That, okay, how many of you have seen the back of your head without the help of a mirror or camera? How many of you have seen the back of your head?
No one.
No one. Right? But if somebody pulls the hair on the back of the head, then there is a feeling of pain, there is feeling of pinch. So that feeling is, why is this feeling there? Because soul is still producing its consciousness in that place. But then there are some people who unfortunately have a limb which is paralyzed, even though the limb is hanging with the body, but it is still not functioning as a part of the body. So in literal sense, what it means is the soul has withdrawn its effect from that place. So that's why that matter is and having without any sensations. The one who knowingly sees this difference between the body and the owner of the body and can understand the process of liberation, can understand the process of liberation through this bondage, also attains to the supreme goal. So first of all, was Krishna was saying that person who comes to hear even without coming with a prerogative of hearing, but they just come to hear, they also attain liberation. But here is a second kind of a person who knowingly wants to know the difference. That also achieves the supreme goal. Okay, thank you, Krishna. So this is the thing we discussed today. Arjuna asked 6 questions. What is Kshetra? What is Kshetragna? What is Jnanam? What is Jnanam? What is Purusha? What is Prakriti? And Krishna described Kshetra, Kshetragna, and Jnana. Kshetra is body. Kshetragna are the 2 knowers of the body, which is soul and supersoul. And Jnana is to know this. What is Kshetra? What is Kshetragna? From verse 2 to 7. Kshetragnam chapi mam vidhi. Process of acquiring knowledge, 8 to 12. Mai cha ananya yogena. Knowing the principles of Kshetra and Kshetragna and knowing the intricacies of the union is the process of acquiring knowledge. Genam, object of knowledge, Sarvata Pani Padam Tat. So object of knowledge is also Krishna. He says that I'm the light in all the luminous objects. I'm the object of knowledge. I'm the knowledge, and I'm also in everyone's heart, right? Then we discuss in detail Prakriti, Purusha, and union. So Prakriti, material nature. Purusha is the living entity here, and how they are united, and how under the influence of 3 modes of material nature, the soul, even though being eternal, is changing bodies and is responsible for its own suffering and enjoyment. So that is vision of knowledge, last part of the chapter, 27 to 35 verse. Kshetra Kshetragnor evam antaram jnana chakshushaha. Okay, so very heavy chapter. Please go back